Okay, so today I would like to talk about this. The book The Dice Man. I already talked about it when I was speaking about the Such a Shame clip video, because for the clip as for the song, Mark Hollis was inspired by this book written by a man named Luke Reinhardt, but it's a pseudonym, it's not his real name, but whatever. I want to talk about this book again because it is absolutely incredible. I never read something like that. I'm not a huge reader. I read a lot when I was younger, less now because I have less time. But I don't mind reading books, and I have a lot of books in my house. I would say that I'm rather a reader, but not all the time because of my work. But I like reading. So I spent a lot of time reading that. It was very long because now it makes almost 1 year that I started it. So it's a long time ago. Usually I read faster. The problem is that this book is really well written with a lot of English words that I don't understand. So I have to search in the dictionary, and sometimes there are 4, 5, 6 words in one page that I must search. So of course it makes the reading slower. That's why I spend so much time to read it, also because I'm so exhausted in the evening when I go to bed that most of the time I fall asleep and I don't really have the time to read before sleeping. But I didn't give up because actually this book really interested me. It did interest me a lot, and I knew that I wanted to finish it, not only because of Mark Hollis and Such a Shame that I love, but also for the book itself, which is really very, very interesting. I read a lot of feedbacks and reviews of people saying, oh, the concept was great, but then he only talks about sex and things like that. It's not very interesting. No, it's true that there is some parts which are a little whoo, but at a point I was wondering if the book was not going to turn to something really more than erotic, like a porn book. But no, actually, that's what is interesting, is that you think that you are going to go somewhere and you end up in a completely other direction. So, I'm going to try to explain. When I started the book, I found the concept very interesting. The idea, I explain if you don't know the book. It's psychiatrist who is depressed, and he is bored in his life and he wants to give some excitement in his life. So he decides that he's going to throw two dice, and according to the result, the numbers which appear, he does different things or he behaves differently. It depends on what he decided at the beginning. So of course it made him do crazy things, like going to rape a neighbor, and it ended up not being a rape actually, um, or behaving weirdly in parties. I'm not going to tell you everything because if you didn't read it, it's not going to be a surprise then. But it made him do really crazy things. But I would say the crazy things are not because he threw the dice. It was because the choices he was doing at the beginning. He was saying like, okay, if it's a 1, I go to rape a woman. If it's a 2, I'm going to act like this. So he chose the solution, the possibilities at the beginning. So it's not so much the fact that he threw dice, Because after all, if you hesitate between different situations and you don't know what to do, and if you are fine with all the possibilities, then you can take dice and say, okay, the dice is going to decide what I'm going to do, because anyway I'm fine with every possibilities, but I don't know what to do. So then that wouldn't be not moral, because after all you have the right to let a die or dice decide of what you are going to do. What is immoral, it's rather what he chose as possibilities at the beginning. It's not the dice who said you are going to rape. The dice only show a number, and he assigned the number to something which was immoral. So there is kind of a nuance here, but it's true that building one's own life only on the decision of dice, that is a little weird. It's not the way that I imagine my life. Usually when I do things, it's because I decide to do them. At least I try to do them. Let's say that I express my intention to do them and I do everything I can to reach my goal. It doesn't mean that it's going to turn out that way. So I was thinking that this concept is interesting because actually it's already what we live. When we decide something, I will give you an example which concerns me. For example, I decided that I was going to move from France to United States, to Los Angeles more exactly. So far, I managed to do it. I moved. I got my visa. I got one extension of stay. I got a second extension of stay. I'm asking right now for a third extension of stay. It's very difficult. Psychologically, it's very difficult. Sometimes I'm wondering, is my fate to be in the United States? Because this is really hard, you know, when you live somewhere but you don't know where you will be in 2 years, or you can't really plan far ahead because you don't know what will happen. So I do everything I can to stay. I want to stay. I do all my paperwork, all what I can, as much as I can to stay. But in the end, I'm not the one who decides. Someone in an office is going to decide. But actually, it's not even this someone in an office who is going to decide. It's the universe. I was going to say my fate, but it's the universe, or call that God if you want. I'm not especially religious, so I don't want really to speak about God, but I would say the universe. Maybe that for the highest good, if I was not getting my extension of stay, maybe it's because I was not meant to stay here, you know. So actually there is a kind of surrender. What I mean is that you decide, you want to do something, you go to that direction, you do everything you can to reach your goal. But in the end, things never happen as we plan. We are not the ones who decide in the end. It's the universe who decides for us. So we can only pray, surrender, and ask for the universe to decide for us for the highest good. That's how I see the things. With this book, somehow it's a little the same, except that he does the things by a more materialistic way, because it's the dice. He has 2 dice, and he throws them, and according to the result, he's going to do this or that. But even by choosing like that and doing this or that, he ends up in situations that he couldn't even imagine because it never turned out exactly as he wanted. In the book, at a point, he discovers the laughing man. The laughing man, it's not the dice man, it's the laughing man. The laughing man who is laughing about every choice he's doing because he thinks that if he chooses that, this is going to happen, or if he chooses that, this is going to happen. And the laughing man is laughing and laughing because we think that we choose, but we never choose. The universe decides for us, and in the end, we are not ending up in the situation we imagined. We always make plans for the future, but the things never happened as we planned. When I arrived here in the United States, I was imagining something, and now it's completely different from what I thought. There are good things, but there are also very bad things. I'm not saying that I regret being here. No, no, no. I am very happy to be here. But there are very difficult things that I couldn't even imagine once again. And maybe if I had known in advance that this or that would happen, maybe I wouldn't have come. So we think that we act according to the ego and our will, but in the end we are not the one who decides. So in his book, after all, it's not so immoral, it's not so crazy. You know, at a point in the book I was like, this guy is completely crazy, he's completely insane, he's a doctor, he takes care of people who are sick, and he's more sick than his patients, you know. And I was like, what is that? And I was even kind of disturbed by the book, because every time I read it, I'm completely upside down. I have so many questions in mind. I'm not sure to understand anymore how the world works, you know, and I'm very disturbed by the book. But at a point, I arrived when he has to he must defend himself in front of his colleagues because he risks to lose his job or his position. So I'm not going to tell you the result of that, because otherwise you are not going to discover the book if you didn't read it already. But I'm going to read you just a small thing which made me think a lot. So he says, it's something like newly born Christians giving up their souls to Christ or God, or the Zen student or Taoist surrendering to the Tao. In all these cases, the ego control game is abandoned and the student surrenders to a force which is experienced as being outside himself. So, he's saying that finally, when you are religious, you surrender to the religion and to the highest good of your religion. And what is the difference with the dice? The dice are just small things that you throw, it's objects, and you give them the power of God somehow because they decide for you. Though you have a responsibility in the decision since you choose the different possibilities. But finally, it's very close to religion when we think that God is going to decide for us. We are not very far from this kind of philosophy. So I found that very interesting, because while he's defending himself in front of his colleagues, suddenly I was like, he's right. He's completely right. he doesn't want to get bored, so he plays a game to see where his life is going to go. And it's not the ego which decides, but it's dice. Why not? And at least he's alive. Maybe he's going to lose a lot of things, but he's not going to be bored. He's going to have fun. It's very exciting. You don't know in advance what is going to happen. Actually, I tried something like that myself, but it was very insignificant, I would say, very small. I didn't have a lot of money to go and buy some food, and I thought, okay, I'm going to buy proteins, but it must not be more than $3 so each. So I'm going to choose here the first thing I find which is less than $3, even if it's something that I usually don't eat, I'm going to buy it. And I did that for everything I bought in the store, and I ended up with a purchase which had nothing to do with what I usually buy. And actually it was good and surprising, and even my son was like, wow, what is that? And I thought, this book is absolutely not stupid at all. Of course I didn't throw the dice. There was no number. The only condition was it had to be less than $3, and I take the first thing that I see which is less than $3. That's how I decided. And it was kind of a game, and it was kind of exciting. So I thought, I'm doing something like that somehow. So I'm reconsidering this book as not being stupid at all. I didn't finish it. As you can see, I'm here. So I still have about 100 pages to read, so I'm not completely at the end, but I will keep you posted if I have something else to say, and I'm going to finish it for sure because this book is absolutely fascinating. I would say I recommend it to someone who is mature and who is not fragile emotionally. Because if you are fragile emotionally, or depressed, or if you are young, like in the 20s, or even if you are a teenager, first, if you are a teenager, no, I don't recommend this book because there are a lot of porn in it and it's not appropriate for someone young. But if you are young, like in the 20s, and you are beginning your life, I don't recommend this book because it's really very psychologically very, very disturbing. So I think that only a mature person who is able to make the difference between what is possible and what is not, can read this book. That's what I would say. The last thing that I wanted to say is this. At page 137, it's written, "The first biannual fate-dealing day have arrived. Momentous occasion. I blessed the dice in the name of Nietzsche, Freud, Jack Eckstein, and Norman Vincent Peale, and shook them in the bowl of my hands, rattling them hard against my palms. I gurgled with anticipation. The next half year of my life, perhaps even more, trembled in my hands. The dice tumbled across the desk. There was a 6, and there was a 3. 9. Survival, anti-climax. In conclusion, even disappointment. The dice had ordered me to decide anew each month what my special fate was to be. So each month he will have a different fate according to what was decided. And trembled in my hands, So it reminded me of the lyrics of Such a Shame, and I suppose that he took this part of the lyrics from that. But I realized every Tok Tok album was different. Every time they were doing a new album, it was something completely different. I started wondering if Marcolis didn't throw the dice to decide how his albums were going to be. I can't affirm that because I was not there, and it's just a question that I have in mind. It doesn't mean that it's true. I'm not saying that I have the truth. No, I'm not saying that. However, it seems that this book has a lot of influence on the Marcolis way of creating. And because you see, there is a word which comes back very often in the Marcolis lyrics. It's the word change. And change, it's all about change in this book. And, you know, I just hope that he didn't stop his career just because of the throw of a dice. I really hope that, because that would be a pity, and then I wouldn't agree with the dice anymore. Anyway, if you have any questions about this book, please feel free to comment below, or you can send me a message, and I will keep you posted about that if there is something new and more interesting to say. I recommend it. I never read a book like that. It's really very, very particular, and very interesting, and very philosophical. Bye bye, see you in the next one.